let's look at recapping in terms of what you would have covered and how we would have gone about, this particular unit. Now, we always study strategy marketing. Marketing is all about the process of, planning and, looking at the marketing mix, 4 Ps, 7 Ps, looking at segmentation, positioning. All that is fine. When you look at planning side of things, we look at basically 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Unilever, for example, Coca-Cola, some of the large companies, they do a 15-year planning as well. You look at it in the UK, like Marks and Spencer, Sainsbury's, these big companies will do a 15-year plan. And the reason why they look at long-term planning is what they have to do is they have to do an alignment of 3 things. First is the alignment of strategy in terms of where the market is headed and how will the strategy of the organization orient with the requirements of the market. It will feed into things like, looking at the internal and external factors of how the organization would, plan. Internal factors are going to be more in control of, the things which are going to be directly under the control of the company. So things like payroll, recruitment, training, development, product development. Outside wise, when we look at basic tools that you can apply would be PESTEL, wherein you're looking at political changes, economic climate, technological changes which are happening. So those will feed into, and at some stage the organization would look at creating a document which is going to be a strategy document. Now this strategy document with the plan in place for 3, 5, 10 broken down into a number of years will become like a planning document for the organization, which will in turn become a book from which everybody will sing. So the HR's role, the departmental roles would be to break down the major objectives into smaller objectives, marry them into job responsibilities of the employees. So it will start off with mission, vision. We'll talk about, where the organization has headed. Most organizations have a 2020 plan or a 2025 plan. And that plan is then broken down into various departmental plans and development plans of the company. If it's an engineering background or a production background, then, they'll break it down more meticulously into those plans so that product development can happen in time. Then that will feed into engineering, manufacturing, sales, and marketing. So with that background in mind, what we want to do is understand this particular unit of planning. And we start off with the broad plan and understand the relationship between different types of, key terminology. What is mission? What is vision? How it is feeding into strategy? And dynamics of that feeding into a business plan. The second part of the outcome focuses on understanding how is the business plan, or the planning which the company does is affected externally. What are the external factors affected? And we look at macro environment, which is essentially external factors. And then we break it down. And then we break them down into how it affects each of the stakeholders. So stakeholders here could be employees, partners, suppliers, government could be a stakeholder, policy level, because policies, if they change, it will impact the business, competitors, and supply chain.
Supply chains,
And then in the third learning outcome, what we want to be able to do is you have to create a bit of a plan. So in the third learning outcome, we are looking at picking up an organization and reviewing a particular plan in terms of understanding how the business plan was developed and when it was developed, how it has been reviewed to see if they have met the plan, they are meeting the plan, not meeting the plan, those kind of things. Now here, in particular, in learning outcome 3, we look at basically applying 2 or 3 models, in terms of, if I give you a broad example of, say, let's look at Apple and Samsung. They are fighting tooth and nail in the market right now for, smartphone market share. So when we look at that, by the way, you are able to see the screen, isn't it? You are able to see.
I can see. Clearly, yes.
So I will go to the documents now when I share. So basically, if you look at these 2 companies, what they are currently doing at this moment in the market is that they are trying to do one up in terms of bringing out a new product to the market, which will track and gain more traction with the customers, thereby leading to more sales. So in learning outcome 3, what we have to specifically look at is pick up an organization which you can, with, say, for example, a organization that you can pick up, and then that organization that you pick up, you should be able to apply one of the modeling tools that we are going to talk about. And if I just bring that modeling tool up, say a simple one like an Ansoff matrix.
Yes, yes.
If I just now move this window onto, the second one that I want to look at, and if I look at, say, a modeling tool, because what we want to do is find out the current positioning or the current requirement of the market. So here you have to use a tool like Ansoff matrix. An example, say, of Coca-Cola. Here in that Ansoff matrix, what we tend to do is we find out in a quadrant 4 basic things about the company's strategic plan. One is how would, and when we look at a plan, we are not talking broad, we are going to talk about something specific. So for example, a particular product, we want to map it against and see what is the market penetration, how is it developing in the market, does the product itself require some development, and is there a diversification opportunity for the company to make more revenue? And here, this particular model, when we look at Coca-Cola, and if I go back a couple of years, if you look at, they have traditionally, Coca-Cola and Pepsi have traditionally been companies which have been only associated with fizzy drinks. Now, but if you see in the last 10 years, they have done a lot of product development in order to tap emerging markets and also to create variants of different products. So far, 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, we only knew Coca-Cola. But in the 90s, they started to introduce different types of brands, which were like a sub-brand or, extensions to the main brand or the main product, which was Coca-Cola. So they introduced Diet, for example. They also acquired a lot of other companies wherein they created smaller brands around this product. But the hero or the main product has always been Coca-Cola. So over the years, they've done product diversification, which is to look at introducing, in the main product, they've introduced, so we look at vertical and horizontal. So if you look at integration-wise, in the business, they have bottlers, they have the main component of the businesses, they have bottlers and the formula. And then with that franchise model, they look at distribution and going into the market. But when you analyze the 4 aspects of the product, one side, they have done a lot of product development. That means in their own main brand of Coca-Cola, they've created variants. And that is product development. So introduction of flavors, for example, has been done. And vanilla flavor, Coke Zero, Coke Diet. But the main product has remained Coke. In terms of diversification, what they've done is in order to grab more market, match competition, what it is doing, in terms of their strategic plans, what they've done is they've diversified into other products like bottled water. They've introduced things like iced tea. Some of them have gone into various other associated, products which could be had along with the fizzy drinks, things like wafers, chips, and things like that. So Pepsi and Coke have expanded into the other side of the market, which is the fast food side of the variant of the market, supporting the main product, which is Coke or Pepsi. And that has been diversification. Now, why has that been required is because at some stage they would have done some analysis to see that these are requirements and, demands of the consumer. And with that, they need to be able to develop the market and not just have one product, but also have associated products around the main product, which is the Coke, to be able to give or broaden the offering. And this kind of analysis, which you do in terms of reviewing a particular organizational strategy of why they have diversified, why they have to develop this product, or is there a demand in the market, can be done by using a modeling tool like the Ansoff's matrix. And here, what you have to do in learning outcome 3 is primarily, if I just minimize slightly, make this document a bit smaller, and if I just bring you back to the main document, here you have to look at doing the review. So it talks about the importance of review in development of the organizational strategy. So maybe you have to pick up a brand like Coke or Apple. Why do you think Apple diversified from the iPhone into the iPad? In 2 years down the line, a lot of people started talking about that iPad is like iPhone on steroids. So all what Apple did was increase the size of the screen and then created a new product, which was essentially a larger iPhone, but called it an iPad. And that was an extension of a product because the ecosystem, most of the features of the product remain the same. But after 2012, they started to diversify, and iPad branched off as a separate category of product because you had iPad mini, iPad Pro, which was introduced, I think, 3-4 years back, but there were variants of iPad also created along with the phone. So you have to review this strategy to find out why the pick up an example like Apple, Coke, whichever brand you are comfortable with. And in that, what you have to do is review the current business plan or the strategy of the organization. And that you will do either using, in-source metrics, or say, for example, a Porter's 5 forces model, because that will tell you about whether the company is dealing with competitive forces, whether there are external influences, and that has to be applied. So here, you're not going to use the basic models like SWOT and PESTEL, but because you're reviewing strategy of the organization, you have to look at using models like BCG matrix, ANSOP matrix, Porter's 5 forces model, directional analysis or value analysis, value direction analysis, which will allow you to see the full fate of the organization's activities under one particular umbrella. And that is why you will look at some of these advanced modeling tools which are required to cover learning outcome 3. Now this will give you the position of the company as a snapshot as of that point, or as of that point in time, right? This will allow you to implement any changes. So if you want a static picture, sometimes you see most managers or top management in the organization always start off with an analysis to find out how are we doing with regards to the market, how are we doing with regards to the competition. So here they want to find out the position of the company as of date with regards to the environment, competitors, policies, whatever you call it. And that is a review of the position of the company at that point in time, whether it's for competition, whether it's for strategy, market share, revenue growth, customer base, whatever would be the parameters that you want to look at when you want to do this. So in learning outcome 3, we look at that. Now, when you look at this, it also allows you to understand your strengths and weaknesses, where you're weak. Because when the moment you talk about, say, for example, market penetration, that will come out with 2 objectives. One, if you do not have enough reach in terms of distribution, I'm sticking to the example of Coca-Cola, that would mean that Coca-Cola needs to have more bottlers or distributors in certain territories to be able to reach that consumer. That still gives the potential to the company to expand in that market, because that captive audience or the consumer base they have not reached because of shortfalls in the reach in terms of distribution strength. So this particular model, when used as a tool, will give you also a bit of snapshot of your strengths and weaknesses. And you can pick this up in 4 of these distinct areas. So when they say product development, the example would be when you look at doing this in in-source metrics, you will point out that in product development, what are the main competitors of Pepsi, Coke, Pepsi. You have some of the other local brands as well. So you'll do the positioning of the local brands to see, okay, we have only one variant, which is Coke or Coca-Cola, but other brands have 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of product. That would mean Coca-Cola is priced at £1, but Pepsi has a variant at 80 pennies, £1, £1.50, or they've introduced bottles of 1.5 liter, 2 liter, and that is basically not allowing us to, segment or target all the segments in the market, consumer segment in the market. So that means there's a scope for product development. That means they can introduce a variant of 250 ml, 300 ml, 500 ml, 1 liter, 1.5 liter, 2 liter bottles. And that would give them an insight into that product development has to be done. Though the main product remains the same, but the extensions have to be created, or the way packaging is done has to be looked at, because the demand in the market from the consumer side is making us lose, because we don't have a product, we are losing out on the market to our competitors. So this is a review. This learning outcome 3 is review. Now, when we go to 4, which is what we are going to discuss, is that in the difference between the 3 and the 4 is that in the 3, they are asking you to pick up a company and then do a review, as if you are an external consultant and you are basically doing a review on what you are thinking in terms of the company's position is or the product strategies. Now, in learning outcome 4, we are asking you to develop that strategic option for an organization. So here what you have to do is you have to use, say, different tools. The reason I say different tools is because when you are looking at formulating a strategy, in 3 you are reviewing, That means you want position as of today or as of date. But when you're looking at formulating a strategy which is going to be something which the company is going to work on, you need a different set of tools to do that. And in order to do that, what you have to look at is, here they've given you some idea. So when we look at ANSOC matrix, we are looking at strategies of extension, product development, vertical integration, horizontal integration. When you look at diversification, we are looking at, also looking at value chain analysis. And value chain analysis will consider everything. We'll look at, infrastructure requirement, human resources, product requirement, technology, procurement, and they will look at inside out of what is required to produce that product. So from review, you will look at maybe one or two, but when you look at developing, you're looking at going into a value-based strategy. Now, why are you going to propose that? Say, for example, Coke looks at introducing a new drink altogether, which is, say, Coke Zero. Example. The reason is because here the strategy now is to lead the market by introducing a product which is in demand because people want sugar-free product. And sugar-free product would be a Coke Zero or a Coke Light, which would mean that the sugar content in the product is in line with what the consumers want. And that would require you to look at value chain analysis in terms of you have to look at making a major shift in your procurement strategy, in the partners from which you procure all the raw materials and everything, because you are looking at introducing a new product, and that would require a long-term planning rather than a short-term planning. So here you are going to get into things like value chain analysis in particular, which is one of the tools which is used. And in this, you are going to look at altering all the different types of things which are going to contribute to the success of this product. And that would include logistics, operations. So you look at breaking them into primary and secondary activities. Primary would be things like logistics, operations, marketing and sales. Secondary would be activities wherein the procurement looks at purchase, looks at support activities come in terms of infrastructural change. Campaigns have to change, product literature has to change. So they will become support functions. And in general, you might also require some new alignment to happen in terms of human resources as well. So that in that place, I will now show you an example. In that place, what you have to look at is talk about this using, value chain analysis. Now, if I show you a live example of how this would be done, we'll just expand the window and make it slightly bigger. So here, what we are going to do is when we talk about, the learning outcome 4, in order to look at developing or using tools to develop a strategy, the first thing that we are going to look at is, if I have to choose between Porter's, 5 forces model or have to look at value chain, I would probably say look at picking up value chain analysis. And in this is a tool which is used. This is a tool which is actually used to carry out, let's put it this way, to find out whether the organization has the potential to, look at developing this as a strategy or not. So you're going to look at overall the full positioning of the company by considering everything in terms of primary activities, secondary activities, internal, external, and also look at supply chain. Everything will be covered. So this kind of a tool will be used to assess the capabilities of the organization to say whether you can actually produce the product or not. And that is what is important. So here you will apply maybe a value chain analysis model or a Porter's 5 forces model to basically create and develop a strategy which is being asked for in learning outcome 4. So it is saying be able to develop a strategic option for the organization. So keep a product in mind, a company in mind. With that in mind, keep a product. And with that product, apply one of these modeling tools to actually formulate a strategy, or at least what has been formulated in the market, apply it using one of the modeling tools.
Sure. I'm clear now. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Now, in the second and the third part, which is 4.1, you're talking about the modeling tool. So in the 4.1, if you pick up Porter's, you explain what is Porter's 5 forces model, and for which I'll give you this handout.
Okay.
So I'll send you this handout, which is just after the discussion now. Now, what is Porter's 5 forces handout? This explains this in the model in detail. So it is a model that we use primarily to understand when you're creating a strategy, that how is the say for example, it has got 5 forces. So the five forces which are going to make the strategy successful. So whether the customers are going to buy, what are going to be the threats from competitors? Is there a genuine threat which is going to come from a competitor in terms of a substitute product? And then how much power or let's say the clout you will be having in order to negotiate with your supply chain to start looking at turning them into a direction wherein you are going to be creating or requiring raw material for a new variant of the product. So here, these 5 forces are threats of the new entrants, bargaining power that you have with suppliers. If you introduce something drastically new, will it create traction with your customers? Will your customers buy? So when Apple, for example, creates the product, it has already done a lot of research into what are the new features or benefits which the customers are expecting from the new iPhone. And it tries to align its strategy by introducing those features in the product as closely as possible, because what it is expecting is when it introduces a new variant, it is having to go back to its own base of customers first, which are loyal Apple customers, for the sale of this phone or the new variant they're introducing. And then it has to analyze what is the threat is, what kind of threat it is going to face from substitutes, because Apple's products are not cheap. They're quite expensive, or maybe the highest in terms of the market. But for a similar price, how many different types of other products are available from competition, and what are the factors in those products' benefits which are going to be affecting it negatively, because people will not just be motivated by a brand new product in terms of, say, having an appeal in terms of quite, let's put it this way, just a new advancement in camera feature or something. So they have to do something more than what the customers are expecting, and also what the competitors are currently able to offer. So threat of substitutes, and also threats in terms of customers, because if they find that the features are not good enough, or are something which are going to override in terms of the price point comparison with other substitutes in the market, then the customer might say that, okay, I might not buy this iPhone. Okay, 12 megapixel or a 15 megapixel camera is good, but giving them 300 pounds more than getting some of the other features in the product, I don't think it's worth it. So I will probably shift to another product rather than buying Apple again. So that will have to be analyzed in terms of the Porter's 5 forces model. So that point will cover whether you pick up value chain analysis or you pick up the Porter's 5 forces model, will cover task 4.1. 4.2 is about applying that model, whichever modeling tool you picked up, into with an example of a company and a product. Okay, and to achieve the merit, what you have to do is basically explain that with an example. So if I look at 4.1, I decide to talk about Porter's 5 forces model. I describe that in detail, and I say this is a modeling tool which I've used, which helps me develop a strategy for an organization. 4.2, you pick up a company like Apple, Coca-Cola, whichever one you want to pick up, and here you look at applying that model onto the company for a particular product.
An example, yes.
An example. And then the third, which is the merit criteria, what you have to do is explain the example in detail by showing that how this model has been applied by Apple, and maybe in a product of iPhone, and in the iPhone pick up a new variant like iPhone XR. Why did Apple create iPhone X, which was 10, and then they created iPhone XR, which was primarily a bigger screen size, faster processor, but a lower camera, and reducing the price to appeal to the mass audience. That will help you clarify and meet the criteria of the merit task.
Okay. Sorry.
Is that okay?
Yes.
So I'll send you this particular example of the Porter's 5 forces model, and at the same time, I will also give you, the handout, which will basically allow you to apply either ANSOP or the Porter's to the learning outcome 4.
Yeah.
Now, in the learning outcome 5, what are we looking at in learning outcome 5? So if I minimize this now and go back again into learning outcome 5, so I'll minimize this. Now in learning outcome 5, it is talking about creating a strategic plan. So here what we have to do is create a table, essentially. You have to create a table to say that what will be required to execute that strategy. So you need a plan. Basically, a table has to be created.
Okay. In the table there will be like a 4 or 5 steps to have a strategy plan from the beginning stage to the last stage when you execute the task, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So here, for example, if I give you the thing that I talk about is that this particular learning outcome is all about picking up a company and a product and showing what direction they are going to take and how they will meet the objectives. So I'll give you an example here. You look at the transition of how Microsoft is currently doing. So when we had Steve Ballmer, they were out because Microsoft had missed the bus to capitalize on the OS operating system for the phone. So what they did was they created Windows Mobile, they took over Nokia, but all that has not been successful. That's the background. But how has Microsoft now created a structure and taken a different direction to lead in the market? So what has happened is with the new CEO coming in, Satya Nadella, what they have done is he has taken the company into a very different direction, which is cloud computing, virtualization, and artificial intelligence. Right?
Yeah.
He has said that apart from the revenues which some of the companies have taken a lead on, like Google and Apple, where created Android and iOS and all that, because we've got left out, what we need to be able to do is now get into a different direction. And for that, he has created a different structure in the organization. So if we briefly go into Microsoft's website, and I'll look at an example to show how that change has come about. So here, if we go to the Microsoft website, if you see most of the, product orientation of Microsoft earlier was based around Windows. But what he has done is he's productized the company's offerings by changing the structure of the company itself to say that today we are known in the market from a point of view of products. And those products are Office, Windows, Surface, which is a tablet, your gaming division, and then obviously other types of products which go into this, which is, so he's changed the strategy from hardware to software. That was a major shift.
Exactly.
So when in Learning Outcome 5, understand how to create a strategic plan to meet the business objective. First, you will define in the first learning outcome, explain the structure of the plan needed to deliver a strategy. So what's the strategy which Satya Nadella has brought in? You have to basically put it in inverted quotes that he's moving the company from hardware focus to software focus.
Yes.
That statement explains how he is looking at remodeling the structure of the organization. So everything in Microsoft now is productized or functional structure on the basis of products they sell or position to the customers in the market. So what has happened is, if you look at pre-2010 or pre-2014, when he joined the company was focused into something like desktops, servers, and gaming and search division. So it was Bing, Microsoft Windows Server, Microsoft Windows, and there was Windows Mobile. But after 2014, what he has done is he changed the structure by not calling themselves on the basis of hardware functioning, hardware product positioning, but on the basis of software. So the software is Office 365, Windows, which can go across on Windows, tablets, and PCs, and then Surface, which is the hardware part of it, gaming, and then anything which fits into other types of softwares or deals that they're offering, which is things like virtualization, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, anything which they brought out.
True.
And what he's done in this structure is he's oriented the company into a product structure wherein each product is focused on delivering some value for the stakeholder.
Yeah.
So that it's not a marginal, it's a major change which is introduced, and that is what you need to capture in Learning Outcome 5. Now here, in Learning Outcome 5, when you capture that change, you have to draw up something called tables to show that why there is a change in the structure and how the structure is changing. So you might want to use maybe a screenshot of one or two websites, or in order to expand on how you're showing that change which is happening.
True.
And if I just go back now, when it says produce a plan for dissemination, so here again the table which is required, you will show how the plan has been fixed for 2 years, transition is happening, and how is it affecting each of the stakeholders.
Okay. Yeah.
And then for merit, you're doing another table to show how is this going to be monitored. So for example, monitoring is happening at the board level, at the CEO level, at the departmental level. So the transition for this strategy to happen, what Satya Nadella has done is he's given a 5-year plan to the board, and board has approved that plan. But what you have to do is drop a small table with about 4 or 5 columns and 4 or 5 rows to explain, the plan, action, date, and timeline to achieve.
Yes.
That is what needs to be done in the merit part of this.
Like action plan.
Action, that's an action plan. Absolutely.
Something like the action plan, yes. We have a time frame, smart goals, and then definitely the resources needed. Who will be doing? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Done.
So that is what is required for learning outcome, I would say for your learning outcome 5. I want to show you a particular, what I've spoken about. I want to show it to you 1 second, so that you are able to understand how this is done. Just very briefly. So let me try and see if I can pull out a specific example. So in the dissemination, you could also just very simply show a communication plan.
Okay.
And you can show a small communication plan of how this top level change is actually going to be, communicated across to, I would say, the employees within the organization.
Yeah, that's very important. Yes.
That would be good enough, in terms of showing that this is how it is going to be done.
Okay.
So let me just try and see if I can pull out something which I want to show you. Just 1 second.
No problem.
Just to show you a quick example so that you're able to correlate to what I've said. Yeah, so let me give you an example of this, just to show you a learner's assignment.
Okay.
So here, if you see in this particular assignment, if we start off, he started to look at a strategy for Tesco, and he's explained the full strategic planning process. So in the process, he's looked at, taking, this is a picture obviously, but in the main bits, he started off with facts, SWOT analysis, then a review has been done, strategic analysis can be done through, what we've discussed. Then they've defined objectives and how the review and adjustment or dissemination and monitoring is going to happen. So in this, he's developed a plan, and the plan has been created a strategy plan, and he's made a long-term and a short-term plan. So long-term is 10 years, short-term is 5-year plan, and he's defined certain goals to show how this planning is being done. As you can see, a table here in terms of how the competition is, then aligning vision, mission for it, and then talking about it by application of that particular plan. So he's only used what is called the ANSOF matrix, and as you can see, diversification, product development, he's talking here. Now, going further into the learning outcome 5, what he's done is, in order to look at the structure of the plan which is required to be implemented as per the long-term planning is developed, is given a few points to say Tesco should also look at, getting into, say for example, training his own staff, look at, environmental things or factors which is to reduce landfill, eco-friendly in terms of generating its own electricity, and then aligning with some of the vision and mission statements of Tesco in the future, that the Tesco should look at, things like serving the captive base of customers that it's got by broadening its product, portfolio. So he's focused on diversification only. And then in terms of how it is going to be disseminated, he's talked about setting smart objectives for the organization. And in smart objectives, again, he's referred to the same table of long-term, short-term. And then in the merit activity, he has done how is the strategy going to be evaluated, so monitoring. So he's given some ideas in terms of how they would be the strategic plan of Tesco should be monitored. So he's given some monitoring options, and he said, okay, these are things that needs to be looked at for the next 5 years. So in the distinction task, what he said is compared to market, what Tesco should see in terms of its strategic planning should be related to environment, community, and choices, healthy choices to customers as far as food options are concerned. And that has been detailed out in terms of, some part of the distinction criteria. And then implementation, which is 5 merit 1, which is this task in terms of, merit 1, 5 and 1, in terms of implementation and monitoring, both which are included. What he's done is he's basically created like a small Gantt chart or a chart which is activity chart to say that carry out environmental audit, time frame, action plan kind of thing, which is to say that this needs to be done. And then the dissemination of this can happen to stakeholders depending on what data and things they want. Again, a small table. So who are the internal members who are going to get the information, external members, and how this is going to be communicated externally to the organization.
Okay.
So this is quite detailed, but he's covered everything. He's covered the merits, the distinction, and the basic tasks in terms of this planning process. But he's shown the full planning of how Tesco actually needs to do this, and his focus has primarily been on diversification and talking about some of the broader objectives which are related to competition to be set, things like eco-friendliness, environmental reduction in terms of environmental waste, and also material going to the landfill, and how this will be impacted because the government changes in policies and other bits which are happening will require Tesco to adapt these procedures and best practices in order to move ahead and survive in the market.
Okay, got it. Yes. Okay.
So that will help you cover this particular learning outcome 4 and 5. So what I'm going to do just after this session, just to recap, I'm going to send you the handout for ANSOF, handout for Porter's Site Forces model. I'll also send you a bit of a handout which I have, which is a CIM handout on what are strategic analysis tools. So summarizes all the strategic analysis modeling into one document.
This one I have this one already. I have this.
Okay, that's fine. So it should be on Moodle. So SWOT, starting with SWOT, pistol, going to Porter's 5 forces model, explaining that in detail, and then towards the end explaining value chain analysis, which I've mentioned to you.
Sure.
And then taking example, or they've signposted some case studies, slightly old at this moment, and that's why I will send you those handouts wherein Coke and the application to Coke and Apple are quite new as compared to doing the assignment at this stage.
Sure. Thank you very much. Today I'm clear, like 4 or 5, then I can finish in a few days.
That's fine. Any other questions on this so far?
No, that's fine. It's very clear.
Okay, good
stuff.
stuff.
Yes, thank you.
That's fine. So what I'm going to do with this is send you this email, and then also the assignments which are there, organization, behavior, and research. If I just briefly touch on, because I haven't seen what research you've done on that so far, Deepak, but if I just look at giving you 1 or 2 quick, tips in terms of how I would look at addressing your research. would be that because you're going to look at doing a top-up after this, my suggestion would be, this is an email which normally I would have sent to you in any case. But the idea would be when you do the research, you are going to be looking at picking up something which is going to be quite specific to, a sector. You need to be able to look at picking up something which will allow you to define at least two variables. So the dependent variable is normally on which you are going to do the research, and the independent variable is the sector, because there are lots of different types of problems that is going to be impacting that sector. So from that perspective, your independent variable has to be a sector or a field. Like when I say, there are 16 different sectors: manufacturing, production, engineering, say, you look at services, retail, all these are sectors. When you look at within the sector, you have to always choose an organization for your research to be concise, because you are not doing a thesis, you are going to do a concise research. So here, within the sector, you have to pick up an organization. And the dependent variable is something which is going to be directly related to the problem or the area that you're going to study in terms of the problem. That's the research that you're going to do. So you have to look at one independent variable. Within that, you have to choose a dependent variable. Dependent variable will give you the problems or micro objectives that are going to be your research objectives. And then in order to study those research objectives, you have to pick up an organization. Because you cannot say, like in this case, the person had sent me, a research topic saying, make a case for effective and formalized strategic financial management in small and medium enterprises in the UK.
Okay.
So you're not looking at doing a research for all the SME in the UK. There are 1.2 million SMEs in the UK. So what I did was, this was too broad. So what I asked him to do is narrow it down by changing the title to study the impact of financial planning.
Okay.
And the barriers which SMEs face in terms of financial planning.
Yes.
And that sector, so sector is finance, basically SME. The problem that you're going to study is financial planning. But what is the problem you're going to study? The problem is barriers that the SMEs face in planning financially. Like, for example, when I say financial planning, cash flows, it could be budgeting, it could be, day-to-day workflow, capital management. That is one problem that you're going to pick up.
And then,
and then you have to pick it up within an organization that you're going to be able to get access to be able to get data, questionnaire filled, the interview done. So I told him that you pick up one SME that you know, which you have access to, and he picked up All Purpose Payroll Limited. So here we narrowed it down from a topic that he was looking at doing, which is studying strategic financial management in SMEs in the UK, to narrow it down to studying the same topic, which is financial planning and what are the barriers which organizations have, but limited it to a small company, which is All Purpose Payroll Limited. And we only studied barriers in planning, say, for example, cash flow statements. How does an organization arrange its cash flows, manage its cash flows? That's it. Short-term finances, long-term finances. Because there could be lots of financial planning which a company does. But what are we looking at in financial planning? We are looking at understanding financial planning from a point of view of short-term financial planning, which is done by raising, say, I'm not looking at long-term, which could be done through debentures, issue of bonds, or, share, flotation of shares. No, you can't do that in 5,000-6,000, words. So you have to look at short-term planning, which could be overdraft, it could be loans, short-term loans, it could be injection of capital, which is done by the director or the owners of the company. It could be looking at doing away with some stake in terms of percentage shares by bringing in an investor who will invest into the company, but in turn become non-executive director, but will say that I will need 5% or 10%, shares of the company and profitability, and I will invest so much money in the company. So he was looking at, I said, narrow it down. You're not doing a 30,000 word analysis or a thesis. You're doing a 5,500 words project. So you look it down to short-term finances only.
Sure. Actually, my topic is also very simple, and the specific in my industry. But I just guide me how can I achieve the merit in that work. Yes, but on Zoom I have already sent, but it's related to OTHM. But I think they have a different format for the evaluation, right? Little bit. That's why I wanted to another feedback. I don't know. You will send or you will send to me about this.
No, I will give you some feedback. I'll remark your work and send you some
Yes.
feedback over.
Yeah, in ATHE format. Because
Send you more details on it.
Sure, please. And then I will resubmit within 1 week. I will fix it and I will resubmit. Okay, as a
That's
final.
fine. No problem.
Yes.
That's okay. That's perfectly okay.
Yeah, actually he highlighted that there are small problems are there, like the work follow, and then some subject like some aims and objectives are supposed to be introduction, but it was going to research area, and then Harvard research referencing. He highlighted a few small problems that I can fix within 2-3 days. But I will try to achieve a merit for that research only, at least, because I will do the top up. Then this research is very important for me, as you told me before as well. They may ask before, if I want to enroll to top up, they may ask me what you did in your research.
That's no, they will ask your level 7 assignment to them. That is quite clear.
That's why I want to little bit focus more. At least I can get married, then it's fine for me, right? That's why.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will send you some. I will send you some details, because what you need to do is structure your research in such a way that you start off with the introduction, wherein you explain in 50 to 70 words why are you doing your research, what is the reason of research. In that, then you slowly tailor it down to research problem in 20 to 30 words. And then with the research problem, what you do is you formulate the objective. So here you'll have a major objective, which is 1, and then you'll have minor 2 or 3 objectives that you are going to investigate.
Yes.
Right. This is where the investigation or your research will actually happen.
Exactly. Yes.
So these 2-3 objectives. Now you have to explain the rationale of the research. You have to, if you are going to test your rationale, then you need to look at, testing your hypothesis. So there is chi-square hypothesis normally we use. And when you test your hypothesis or, your research by saying that how do you know this research is successful? So that would involve testing of your, you will define a research problem and you will then test that research problem by using a hypothesis to test it. And in the timeline of research, you'll draw up a Gantt chart, and then Gantt chart or a table will basically say that I'm going to research for 8 to 10 weeks. In the first week, I'll finalize proposal. Second and third week, I will do literature review. Third week, I will draw methodology, then do data collection, analysis, presentation of findings. And in this, you detail out into 5 or 6 chapters, which are going to be in your assignment. One is introduction. Second is going to be your literature review, which is where you study the existing literature, material available, research available in the market, and then you summarize and relate it to your problem areas that you are studying. Then you define your research methodology. After designing your research methodology, you also design what is called a questionnaire, how you're going to collect data. So is it going to be questionnaire? Is it going to be survey? Is it going to be interview? You will define all that. And then once you've done this, you get the questionnaire approved. Once it is approved, the research methodology is approved, then you start doing data collection, which will be followed by analysis, and it will then involve what is called triangulation of, your literature review, lit review as we call it, your objectives and the findings. Because it cannot be that you have done a review on something like, I'll tell you, like here the same topic was financial planning and impact and the barriers. So what are the barriers that you've researched? Barriers of research that could be, say, for example, companies are not able to get credit in the market because they are too new or too small a business. That is one of the barriers. Now, your objective should be related to the barrier that you are actually investigating. Before you set the objectives, you even do the literature review, you have set an objective to say, I'm going to study the barriers which are there in financial planning. What are the barriers? You will define those barriers, and on those barriers, you will do literature review. You will collect existing market data from various research journals, books, whatever, to study what are these barriers, how they impact the business from current studies. And then on the basis of that, you will take them further by drawing up a questionnaire to find out how these problems can be overcome. So you're going to collect data on what has been like an extension to the research that you're doing, that this is information presently available, but how these barriers impact the business now, which was a research done 2 years back. So you make questions to further ask and investigate that particular problem.
Okay.
And with the answers that you get, the questions, now your questionnaire might have, at level 7, you might have to have a questionnaire which is using Likert scale. That means you start with, strongly believe, strongly disagree, and neutral. You go to agree and strongly agree. So you'll have to look at doing up a questionnaire which will look at some sort of a scale. And with that analysis, you will then collate. So you might do a sample size of 50 to 60 people. You send out a questionnaire. And you might use Google Forms, or use qualimetrics, which are techniques, advanced statistical techniques that you have to use to collect data, right? You cannot say that I will send out, an email to the learners to, at level 6, 7, you cannot do that because you'll have to look at developing and understanding advanced statistical techniques. And these techniques by using Google Forms, qualimetrics, and in some cases even SPSS, Statistical Package for Social Sciences, which will be, in large case studies or large research cases, when you have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 participants, you have to analyze the results of your questionnaire. So what you do is you create a questionnaire which has some sort of a scale, then you manually tabulate the output of those questionnaires, and then feed it into a software like Qualimetrics or SPSS, and they give you an analysis of what the questionnaire results are. And then you triangulate by presenting these three into findings with graphs, charts, and tables. And the last part is your what is called conclusion, recommendation of what could be the future areas of research, and then what are the, say for example, ethical requirements and limitations that you face in the research. That, say for example, you send out to 100 people or only 50 people filled. You have to discard 50 questionnaires because they were incomplete or not completely filled or not relevant. And that is why, in order to remove the skew in your research findings, you have to describe the limitations towards the end. Now, this is the format which will be followed for your 12 to 15,000 words dissertation at the MBA top-up level. So I would suggest, I don't know in terms of how Anjum is delivered, because this is a specialist unit which I also teach, but this time I've asked him to deliver. This is how I will teach you in 5 chapters. And I think most of the content that you see on Moodle that I've put has been put from a point of view of giving presentations on individual topics like these. That what is research method, qualitative, quantitative techniques, understanding literature review, understanding, other bits which is in terms of, your conclusions and things. So all that has been done in such a manner that you have individual presentations for these topics.
Yes.
So I think
do I need to add here, because there is an option for adding the assignments, but I didn't add. I was running only through email. Do I need to add here in the profile?
Add what?
No, there's a space. There's a link to add my assignment in my course.
If you want, you can add your assignment there. Not a problem. You see, in the new Moodle we have implemented this, but typically the awarding body will come back to us and ask for something, because the idea of having this is that if you upload your assignment here, the awarding body ATHE can also see your submission.
Oh, that would be great. Yes, I will sign. Then I will update. Yes.
And the grading part, because in the previous qualification that you did with OTHM, it was only pass and fail. But in this qualification, you have pass, merit, and distinction. So we've implemented the grading criteria here, and that allows you to understand why you are achieving a merit or why you're achieving a pass. Because it's not let me have a quick look. I'll show you. Because you need to be able to achieve. The grades are basically based on a back-end point-based system. So if you have to achieve merit, you have to be over 440 points, to be able to achieve merit.
Okay.
And distinction is over, 600 over, I think something. So I'll show you one. very briefly. Let me do that very briefly. All these here, this is a grading structure. So unit is 45 points for pass. But when you do the merit activities, it becomes 60. So overall, your merit, if in order to achieve merit, you have to have 5 units wherein you have achieved merit. So your overall diploma will say merit.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. And if you want overall distinction, that means 6 of the 7 units, 6 of the 8 units have to be distinction. And that will give you a rating of between 550 to 600.
Okay.
So this is, when we apply this at our end, there is a bit of grading in terms of points. How these grades are calculated, there is a bit of point system in the background. And that point system in the background allows you to then achieve, that overall grade of the diploma, which is going to say, merit or distinction or whatever.
Okay.
Overall, you can have an individual grade for the unit, but at some stage, what we are going to do is put all the points together, and then in that points, what we are going to do is, basically look at giving you an overall grade, and that is what will actually come across, on your overall diploma. You see, so it will say very clearly has been awarded in merit, because the units, he's got all the units which are either merit, or at least 5 of the 8 units are merit.
Yes.
That's how you achieve overall merit.
Okay.
So if you have to achieve overall distinction, your 6 unit out of 8 have to be distinction, and the balance 2 have to be merit. None of the unit will be passed.
Yeah,
and that's how you actually exceed the score of 555.
Yeah, true. That's good.
So if, for example, if you achieve only 45, say for example, if you do the unit and you achieve only 45, and if you multiply 45 by 8, you're looking at only 360 points. That means you're still going to be in the pass category, just about meeting pass. But if you say you have 45 in 2 units, which is passed, and then the balance 6 units, you have 60 points. So 360 plus 90 will take you to 450, which will move you into merit.
Merit, yeah, perfect.
You have to achieve an overall merit, you have to have minimum 6 units with merit and 2 with pass. If you look at
5 or 6? 6 or 5? 5 or 6?
6.
Yeah. Okay.
5 will be borderline, because in then some cases what happens is some units have, if you see the criteria, some units will have only a few merit opportunities. So in this case, if I look at the first unit, strategic planning, you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 of merit opportunities, and distinction is 3. But in some units, if you see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 opportunities for merit, but there are only 2 for distinction.
That's why.
So depending on that, to be very, very sure, you need 6 merit and 2 pass minimum to make an overall merit.
Okay.
So it will depend on the units essentially, and the criteria it is giving you to achieve those merit.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so
thank you. Yes.
Now, Deepak is send you a quick email right now with this, so that you have it.
I'm waiting for you actually. Yes, I'll wait for you today. Yeah.
No worries, Deepak. We will catch up with you next week.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Raman. Thank you.
Bye.